All right, so welcome everyone. Today we are presenting an online artist talk with Glenn Grishkoff. My name's Seth Pringle. I will be your host. I'm program manager at the Salmon Alfreda Malouf Foundation for Arts and Crafts. It's a beautiful day here at the Malouf. I took this photo earlier today. The rain cleared. It's beautiful. We hope to have you out here to enjoy it soon. We are still closed for the time being until further notice, but hopefully we'll be able to have everybody out to the Malouf very soon so that you can enjoy our garden with us here. So we got some more people coming in. Welcome. If you're just joining us, we're about to get started with Glenn Grishkoff. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for making a donation. It's crucial in these uncertain times for the Malouf to get support from you and all of our community. So thank you very much for that. Before we get started, I'm going to start out with a native land acknowledgement. The Salmon Alfreda Malouf Foundation for Arts and Crafts acknowledge the Tongva peoples as the traditional land caretakers of Tovangar, or the Tongva world. This area includes the Los Angeles Basin, South Channel Islands, San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys, and portions of Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work for the Taraxatom, or indigenous peoples in this place. As an institution located on unceded indigenous land, we pay our respects to Hanukvatom, ancestors, Ahihirom, elders, and Ivuinkem, our relatives, relations, past, present, and emerging. So I'm very excited to have Glenn Grishkoff presenting today. So if you've been on one of our previous artist talks, it's going to be similar format. Glenn is going to share a presentation, and then after he's done, we're going to do a question and answer session at the end. So you are welcome to type your questions into the chat box at any time during the talk, and we'll just save those for the end, but you can type them at any time. Glenn has been engaging with our discovery garden here at the Malouf, and he's going to talk about that. So we're very excited to see his merging of art and ecology. Very fascinating stuff. Very unique practice. So I'm excited to see the presentation myself. So to introduce Glenn Grishkoff, California-based artist Glenn Grishkoff was raised watching his Chinese-born Russian father grind his own ink and paint glyphs from his childhood. Grishkoff's own experience in Asia taught him the power of natural materials and the spirit of calligraphic stroke through the creation of sculptural objects and performance works using clay, wood, metal, textiles, and hair. He references personal and ancient rituals that poignantly reflect human experience and pay homage to the animal spirit instilled in the physical world. In the words of the artist, the handmade brushes I create function on two primary levels: as works of art and as functional tools to paint with on ceramic, paper, and cloth surfaces. A wide variety of horse, deer, moose, squirrel, and skunk hairs are used to create my brushes, resulting in one-of-a-kind, sharp-pointed tips that are not found with machine-made brushes. The marks my brushes make are free-flowing and as magical as ocean waves curling. My eyes hone in on subtle curves, patterns of bamboo and wood weathered from nature that feel sensitive to touch and would make both a comfortable and beautiful brush handle. The fit of a handle in the palm of my hand is important to the general feeling and direction the final brush stroke will take. Glenn Grishkoff has shared his expertise as an artist and brush maker by conducting national and international workshops for over 20 years. He is currently a professor at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, teaching art and ecology. Since 1995, he has enjoyed invitations to artist residencies in South Africa, Japan, and Thailand, and has collaborated with Oscar-winning designer Colleen Atwood and renowned ceramic artists Paul Solner and Peter Volkos. He earned a BFA from C.S. Fullerton and a MFA from Claremont Graduate University. In 2008, he was awarded the Idaho Commission on the Arts Fellowship. During the summer of 2019, he was invited by Sierra Nevada College as a visiting ceramic professor and resident artist to Eastern and Central Japan. All right, so Glenn, I'm handing it over to you. Welcome, thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Seth. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you put into organizing this talk and the upcoming workshop. I'd really like to thank the Sam and Elfrida Malouf Foundation for the Arts and Crafts for having me and opening your arms to me. And I'm grateful for all of you being here to hear my talk. And I look forward to questions at the end, and we'll go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me just fine? Are we good? Good.
Looks good, sounds good.
All right, thank you. I'd like to pay respect to my Oma at this lecture, who was my first mentor. I have had many mentors, and I want to leave with you the importance of mentorship. And in our culture, it's very important, and it's important for our future generations. So my Oma, that's a grandmother in Russian, fled the Bolshevik Revolution on camelback to China, to Beijing, and she gave birth to my father and my aunt. And she was a painter, a ceramist. She was an inventor. She owned her own business. She made Russian vodka. She had her own brewery, so she made traditional Russian breads as well. She had a bakery in China. And after the war, she was able to immigrate to America and put her roots here. And I was honored to grow up with her, watch her cook. My grandma could cook a meal out of dirt. She was resourceful, and that passed on to me in not only in food and appreciation of life, but also the art that I create. I've had many mentors, but I want to dedicate this to my Oma. Okay. This is a ceramic owl that she made. That bird, as you will see in the presentation, has a special significance. The image you're seeing now is a one brush mark made for my Instagram post. I have a large series of works called A Brush with Nature. So each time I go out and make a post, I'll go out to the garden, I'll use a succulent, or I'll use a brush from my studio or a feather. And if I use the succulent, I'll make sure I replant it so it'll grow and have a rebirth. So this was a piece I did in homage to my Oma. This is painting with the elephants. In 2007, I was invited to go and live with the Hill Tribe people in Chiang-dao, Thailand, and northern Thailand. And I was able to paint with the elephants. So it's animal using animal. it's the invisible becoming visible. So I would take my finger and I would make lines or circles, and the elephant would mimic that. I would place the brush into the paint and then hand it off to the elephant. And when I placed it in the trunk, it was like a vacuum cleaner on reverse. It was so, the power of the elephant and the delicate trunk was just amazing for me. I had to make a brush with a crossbar so it wouldn't fall into the elephant's trunk. The hair that you see here is deer hair. And after I passed off the brush, the elephant would make the mark. So you'll see on the far right, that's the trainer, the mahout, the human comrade to the elephant. This was a series of paintings I made. It was a rainy day, very humid, but I went and swam with the elephants first down in the river. So it became a ritual. Also, they were holding a couple, I had brought a large moose mane brush with me with moose antler, because a lot of them would never know what a moose would look like. So I was living in the Northwest at the time. So I brought that with me, and the elephants were able to, they didn't use it, but I think they held it in their trunk. This was another Instagram recent one where the Enzo, for me, the circle represents the cycle of life. We come out of the womb, it's circular. We chart the cycles of the moon throughout history. And when I meditate from the spine, the bottom of my spine, upward through my head in a circular motion. The circle is very fascinating for me. A lot of the monks will practice Enzos before they go into meditation. The sumi ink is used on a piece of paper, not for art's sake or for attachment, but for going into focus. When the Enzo is closed, often there's no questions. But if the Enzo's open, that means a question needs to be answered. They're looking for an answer to that specific question that morning or evening. The slide on the left is a brush I made. Both of them are the same brush I made in Chengdao using the monk's clothing, rope, and broom corn straw from the hardware store. I thought I was going to find lots of brush hair there and brushes. Well, they have a young language, unlike Japan, China, Korea. So they didn't really have many brushes. So I had to hunt for the materials in the woods, in the jungle, in the hardware stores, wherever I could go and find materials. So when I go to another location and make my work, I don't want to bring the materials that I'm accustomed to. I can make my work here in my studio, but when I branch out and go somewhere else, it's the mystery, it's the hunt for the magic of the items in that culture, in that society. So you can see the yellow color, the cloth is from a glove, cut up glove, and there's a little homage, a little Buddha inside. I've gone down to the beach and I've used my non-harm sumi ink on the beach to create ensos that are ephemeral. So they wash away, they come back and regenerate later on. So it helps me detach from my work when I see the ocean take the ink away. This is a collaboration with Paul Soldner. Paul Soldner was my mentor at Claremont Graduate University. It was an honor to study with him. He's known as the father of American raku. I was very fortunate to study in a time period where a lot of emphasis was placed on the lineage from Japan, from Mashiko, from Tokoname, from Shigaraki. These traditional centers were really a part of what I was educated about in my work. So the brush was really influenced by seeing the how master calligraphers worked. And Paul was influenced from the previous generation. So he was my influence for making a brush. I saw a video of his that he made in Aspen. He had he had pulled a dead skunk away off the road and waited for the bugs to eat it up, and then made some real archaic brushes, skunk tail brushes from that. And I saw that video when I was in community college at Cypress Community College. I studied under Charlene Fellows, who also started with Paul. Char was a very special mentor as well. And the long story short, the brush became my thesis for my MFA graduate show. So there's this little seedling that became and sparked a whole lineage for me in my life's pursuit as a brush maker and artist. So here's Paul's using a couple of my brushes in Aspen. I was commissioned to do a brush for Paul to make a large mural for the Florida Keys Community College. So Paul was used to using tiny brushes. So I had to figure out how to enlarge the brush so it would fit the scale for this large mural. So he's painting with one of my brushes. You'll see the brush in a minute. Pre-fired tiles and glaze. So he's dancing on these tiles without snapping them. It was amazing. One thing that happened that was quite monumental is he did this mark the day Peter Volkus died. We were supposed to have a large crowd, and I was the only one with the camera, and there were about 4 of us out there. And he made this mark in homage to Peter Volkus. And this is the brush I made. It was double-sided, a large moose hair brush. This had actually got ruined from the Key West flood in Key West. It was at Jay Gogan's house, and he sent it back to me and I repaired it. So I don't know where it's at now, but this is the mural finished. So you can see how it's glazed and it comes out. What was really interesting is that Paul was always an experimenter. He would take rope. Some of these marks are just rope dipped into the glaze and splattered onto the surface. He did a practice tile run. It was 4 feet by 6 feet near this large mural. And he made a brush mark, strokes, and then he started taking those tiles and interdispersing them with these after he made this large mark. Well, the problem is that everything was numbered behind the tile. So it threw the numbering system off. So the only thing that they had to go by were the pictures that I took during that special period. This is a same location, Florida Keys Community College. This is in 2000. I was doing a workshop alongside with Peter Volkus, which was an honor. And he came up to me and wanted me to make him a couple brushes. And he came up to me and said, "Oh, just make me a couple brushes." So I made them, and I brought in acrylic paint. He says, "Oh no, you gotta have ink, free flowing ink." So I had a host family there. We got the Arches paper and ink, and he really was very in tune to this brush. He'd start out with water and let it bleed. So one part of the composition you can see at the top started with water and then it was dry, and that's very traditional type of lineage from Japan. Not wetting one part of the composition and letting some parts bleed. And that's something that I've taken with me, especially with the Enzos and the pieces I do at the beach, having the beauty of water washing the stroke away and taking it to another level. So after it was done, he pulled out of his pocket a wad of bills. He said, "Hey, you want some money?" I said, no, I want to trade. So we did this trade, which was quite special for me. This is the brush I made. This is moose mane. So I stacked the hairs. Bamboo is naturally hollow. So I stacked the hairs, align them, and then I glue these hairs in with an epoxy to solidify them, to really keep them tight. Then I further wrap it and place it in. Fortunately, someone was there taking photos, so I have these photos. This is paying homage to animal spirit. I have done over the years a series of work called brush bouquets, where I'm very sensitive about the animal products I use, their hairs and such. So these pieces stem from paying homage to rabbits, owls, deer, squirrels. So I will paint the image on the vessel while it's medium, a little bit leather. This is being glazed. This one I'm putting a glaze on, but I like to paint them on while the clay has some moisture. So it's like painting on glass versus sandpaper. This is what it looks like coming out of the raku kiln. Raku is a process that originated in Japan, and it's related to this tea ceremony. And it's a very interesting process to try. It's been a big part of my life and lineage in my work. This is the finished piece. This is garnet dust that I would collect from the riverbeds in Clarkia on Idaho, and I would experiment adding clay. And these are horsehair tips, horse mane that are stacked. I'm showing this work as the brush as canvas, as the painted surface. And the fingerprints are my grip. So this grip will last a lot longer after I'm gone, as there's a permanency to it. And there's that sort of influence when you did your handprint as a little child and you gave it to mom and dad. And there was that, here I am, I'm permanent, I'm here. This is a series I keep doing using my own paw print, so to speak. This is the feather as brush. These are turkey feathers. And it's a healing tool too. So these are pieces of bamboo right here that I collect off the ocean after rain. A lot of the bamboo reeds will wash up on the ocean, and I can go in and collect the pieces and feel how it fits in my hand and cut it and tailor it. This is golden bamboo here. This is a type of bamboo we're going to use in the workshop from the Malouf Center. They have golden, I call it Buddha belly. We'll be using some of that in the workshop. I just love the shape and the shell type feeling of it. This is my birthday Instagram, where I have a pet wild crow that comes and visits me every morning, and I give him I'll call him in with that, or I have a crow caller, but if I have the door open, he knows I have the door open. So he dropped this feather earlier that week. So I used his feather to paint an Enzo with blue ink on top of one of my old drawings from a long time ago, my teenage years. I'm getting ready to get rid of things, but I'm giving it my work some reincarnation, so to speak. So this was my crow that hung out with me for my birthday. This is a series of feathers using horn from Africa that I collected, non-endangered horn, silver ferrules and wires. The ferrule is traditionally where the hair comes out. This piece in the center was collected by Colleen Atwood. I worked with her. This was going to be on a film that didn't come through, Redemption of Cain. Will Smith was working with her to create this movie. So she had specific pieces in mind for different scenes. And it was very interesting for me to work with what props versus art, how it allowed me to let go of my work and not see it so precious. This is an Enzo, the brush, the golden mark. These are books that I filled up. These books I got from Thailand, and this really relates to, this is the full moon mark. When I sign my work on works of paper or ceramics or my brushes, I burn it into the surface or stamp it in. This is I'm a hairy cell leukemia striver. So I'm a cancer survivor for quite a few years. In 2013, I went to the NIH to be part of history, where I was in a trial, a phase 3 trial given this an immunotherapy, moxetumab, that has eventually been distributed around the world for people in need of this type of cancer and other cancers. And it worked. I'm in remission for eight years now, and there's no sign of it. And they follow me for life. But I had a studio there, so I went down and collected pigeon feathers down in this garden. This was my bedroom, my hospital room, and I filled these books up. And I would come. I came back and forth for about a year. I was 10 days in the hospital and 21 days off. 10, 21. So I go back and forth, and so they gave me an office space to work, and I had my infusions, and I'd be working and I'd be painting. So my art is not a hobby; it's a way of life for me. It's part of me, like I breathe to pump air into my heart. Here's some feathers from the garden and the books and the Enzos. The feather makes such an incredible mark when it's chattered. So people ask me, what is your favorite brush? And I say the feather, the single feather, because you get this broad monumental stroke. It has a feeling, and it's the homage to the bird's last flight. Silver and gold were used quite a bit to celebrate my remission. The idea of the color of that sparkling, each day is so important for me. Each day is the first day of the rest of your life. When you go through a life altering experience, you see, smell, and hear things much different. This is a recent, this week, Enzo using a ermine tail hair brush. This is the type of brush we're going to make in the workshop. These are sea cells. This is work that I made, University of Central Florida. I combined my own human hair with felt and my mother's seashells. So it was about using my own hair in the celebration. I had a very loving mother, very supportive parents. So this pays homage to her. I had a whole show dealing with that work that I made from the NIH experience. This is paying homage to Clark Norwood. This is my cousin, Jeanette, and he recently passed this last spring, and I was asked to make his urns. This little guardian is from my aunt, from her mother, my Aunt Rita, and it's from China, and these are crystals, and you'll see that they open up. There's these chambers, so they become a sacred object to hold not only the ashes, but other things as well. So those are in her possession right now. One brush, one stroke. This is a piece where I wanted to become the brush. So I made a brush body suit, but it felt like a Mickey Mouse costume. So what I did is I became the brush bristle. I wrapped myself in this 16-foot brush with nautical rope from the Long Beach shipyards. And I had a colleague, Val Carter, come and guide me through this performance. I wasn't very shy. I didn't see myself then as a performance artist. So this was being taped, and it was the artifacts were placed in a show. And a TV video was playing in the gallery of that performance, and the sound and the music. So it was very exhausting wrapping that around my lungs, the weight of it. When you perform, it's a workout. There's a lot to that happens that you can't expect, but that's the thrill of it. But also you feel like you've ran a marathon. These are my brush shoes that I used that were deer hair. And these were shoes that I made and wore, and then I reincarnated them into these brush shoes. And these are the marks that they make, with the ink. This was paint. And after I left the paint on to dry, and I still have those shoes as artifacts. These are some of my wetsuit shoes that I love doing shoes periodically, cowhide shoes. These are wetsuit parts from the thrift store. For me, going to the thrift store and the hunt for material is really important, and discovery. And reusing old objects and not just trashing them. I think being in art and ecology right now and becoming more and more sensitive about that. I have always wanted to reuse and recycle, but now it's becoming more paramount in my work. This is Moose Creek Spirit, where I dug clay with students in this area in Idaho, where I took a moose pelt that was given to me from a Native American. And I went to that site and became one with the moose, where this is this little tail. For a large creature, that's the size of its tail. And then I made marks using the clay and the sumi ink, wearing the pelt, becoming connected to that creature. I wanted to pay respect to it. This is a reservoir that it's really beautiful to go to. It's not too far. This is my human hair is brushed at 40. So people would always ask me, do you use human hair? So at 40, I started, my hair started coming out a little more. And, I started printing with my hair. I grew it out and I put the sumi ink in and I printed with it. So you'll see the prints. And then I used hairballs. I made a series of brushes just rolling up my hair as hairballs, making sumi ink marks. And we wash our hair. Water's important. We are mostly water. So there's this idea that I wanted to dip my compositions in water to let them bleed, to be part of my own human body. This is a brush with death, paying homage to animal spirit. This is a work in progress for the last 16 years. So in my workshops that I give, I always get something from my participants. I always get a gift from them. So I always get this question, do you use roadkill? So in the beginning I did, and from that influence from Paul and the skunk that he obtained, but I started making lots of brushes and I really outgrew that. So, but I thought, how can that become a piece of work of art? So in 2004, 2003, I started on this venture of collecting feathers, hair from animals, taking photographs, making a chart of who, what, where, when, and why, where I'm at. Is it snowing? This was right near Mount Rushmore. I was on my way to a residency at Marshall University in West Virginia from Idaho. So this was a frozen pheasant that I found on the highway. And you'll see my truck on the right, I pulled into, and all my stuff for my show and residency. So my motel became my studio for the night from 7 o'clock till midnight. And this becomes one of my most prolific pieces. When you're off the road, you're tired and you want to sleep, but I wanted to work, so I did. So this pheasant was frozen, so I laid it out and I inked this body up, and I did 6 of these pieces on the right, where I printed off with sumi ink off the bird, and I had to press it on, and I took it in the shower and washed it off and let it dry by the heater. And then I said, well, what feathers am I going to use, wing or tail? So I used the tail feathers for this piece, for this for each 6 of the compositions, and I wove them in. So I cut them a certain way where they're woven in. They're an artifact of being the brush being used, so that these are still present on these compositions. Another series using possum prints. I lived in New Wilmington, Pennsylvania, and the Amish one day came over and says, well, I thought you could use this. It was this giant possum. So this is the possum hair at the top, the tip, making the enzo. And I printed the possum. And then after I did this set, I gave it a burial. I buried him. So if I can pay respect to the creature, I will. I only pull over. I go to a place that's safe for me. And that's important. Right now, it's sort of on hold because of COVID. I haven't really been dealing with that. There's times where I would see roadkill and see creatures, and I just wasn't in the mood to do it. I mean, you're dealing with death and life and death and how it comes together. So by giving it 16 years, you can pay 16 seconds on a piece, 16 years or 6 years. So what this piece is going to be a book that showcases all the different types of creatures that I've paid homage to. I want it to be a traveling show, and also educate people on creatures, respecting creatures, all large and small. So with that, I'd like to leave you to remember, always live your bliss and discover your jelly bean. I tell students that pick out your color here. If you can get your color before you've passed, it's great. You can lose your jelly bean, but you can go back into that jar because you found it once. But find that passion, find that what makes you tick, what makes you passionate about living life. And that, connects to the bliss too. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Sometimes we forget that. We're reminded, through my medical issues and such, I've been always reminded about how precious life is. So this is a picture of me building with Legos when I was a little boy. And there were no instructions at that time. And that was a part of my playfulness. I was always building, drawing, and painting. So that was always big support from family, friends, and mentors. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions, dialogue with you, and see what you're thinking.
All right, so yes, everyone you're all welcome to type questions in the chat box. We have one question so far from Barbara. She's asking about the, let's see. Yeah, in the slide with the photo of your Oma, there was a painting in the right panel. Was that one of her paintings? And is the subject of the painting a Buddhist monk?
Yeah, it was one of her paintings. She would take, she was a really good, she would take it and do a grid, and she'd take them out of National Geographic magazines or, Arizona highways, but she would alter it. She would go and deviate. So my Oma would give those paintings to family for Christmas holidays, and we would watch her paint. I was very young when she was doing the clay. So my brother does ceramics, has done ceramics for years. He froze, hand builds, noses, glazes. My mother's mother also did clay. So all of us, there's this sort of clay weaving into our genes here, the Grishkoff genes.
And Jane is asking, did you ever meet Sam Malouf?
I did. I met him once with Paul Soldner and my friend Kathy Coop. We were at Walters and we were invited to go sit with him. And I also saw him working at the Anderson Ranch Art Center. I went there to study with Clifton Monteith. I had done a lot of workshops in a row and I needed to be on the other side. I needed to take a workshop. So I made a brush throne, a willow rustic brush throne, and Clifton was one of the experts in that. But Sam was also working at that time when Clifton was there. So I got to really see the passion for materials and at a high level. I mean, Sam Malouf and Paul Soldner were contemporaries at a very high level in the sense of prolific working for years. And Paul was in ceramics, Sam was in wood, but there were two different tribes that they danced in, but they came together as makers.
Excellent. And, you mentioned, I think, something about Paul being very experimental. He was very groundbreaking in terms of his technical experimentation and trying out new things. I'm wondering if that influenced you in terms of how you think about your materials, how you acquire them, how you combine them and use them.
Well, just ask my students. I'm always reciting, there's always another way to solve a problem. And Paul would talk about the problem as really good. Why not? If you didn't have the problem, it would be a boring world. So the problem results in ingenuity, things that you don't expect to happen. So, thoughts become reality. So when you have a thought coming from here to your arm out into the real world, everything that we see around us that's invented came out of someone's mind. So Paul really taught me about problem solving and also fixing it, figure out a way. If it doesn't work, try it again. And what and Paul also worked with his students. When I was down in the Scripps studio, when I first started there in 1990, he was there working alongside us. And so I continued that in my teachings as well. Students want to see you work. If you and there's a balancing act, and you're getting ready for a show, or if you had a deadline, it's not always very easy. But Paul wrote a book called Nothing to Hide. And I like to leave one story with you all. And this I found out after he has passed. He was a World War II medic who survived the Nazi occupation. He went into the gas chambers and he saw butterflies. They were the last images that were drawn before those people were gassed. And he was going to come back to America and become a doctor, a surgeon. But he came back to America and wanting to be an artist. And so when you think about the butterfly, there's so many metaphors, but I didn't learn that until his passing. It was kept private, but it was very special in the sense of the impact that Paul made on me was very, very monumental. And the impact of his teacher, Peter Volkas, who really changed the history of ceramics in the sense, Paul was part of the Otis group, along with Jerry Rothman, John Mason, Kenny Price. There was this group that really changed clay into coming into the art world as an art material versus a craft. Volkas was involved with the Black Mountain School, and he was with Rauschenberg and Martha Graham, and even Warren McKenzie in the mid 50s. And they had a magic. There was a magic at that time period where things were accelerating very fast. And Paul really took that from Pete, but he was very different than Peter Volkas, but both of them were very passionate about discovery and problem solving. So when Paul went to Otis, there were no potter's wheels, there were no tables. So Volkas said, well, build them. So he and Jenny Soldner and Paul started building the wheel in their garages. And then he built a solder mixer, and he built the tables. So when we were at Scripps, we built our own tables, we made our own clay. And Paul didn't believe in grades, in assignments. So as a grad student, we weighed the student's work. A certain amount of weight. He figured if you were working, you were discovering. If you were blowing pieces up, well, you were blowing them up. So his beginning Scripps students had to fire, had to learn how to throw, hand build, make their own glazes, fire their own kilns on their own. And so being thrown in there is sometimes the best way to problem solve. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Joe is asking, do you have a ritual in your daily life that keeps you making work? So certain times, walks on the beach, how do you warm up or get the mojo flowing?
Good question. I meditate. I wake up. Eckhart Tolle is one of my favorites. He wrote the book called The Power of Now. Ram Dass. There's a lot of people that I look to. I discovered Buddhism when I was at the LH project in Eastern Oregon. I was there, and I was really touched by a Buddhist mentor, and I pay homage. I think that really influenced me. That's the time I started the Brush with Death, the homage series that you saw. I grow white sage in my yard, so I pick that. I have it here. I dry it out. So I do blessings with that sage that I grow. I also like to walk and be with the birds on the riverbed right now. Going and the birds are very important to me. The feathers, having feathers around me. So and also my crow right now, the ritual of my crow coming in each day. this wild crow. And my hummingbirds, I have 5 feeders in the front and 5 in the back. So my hummingbirds are awesome. I have the Allen hummingbird here. But that's a very good question. I think keeping active all the in making work each day to some extent. It could be writing, journaling. It could be making a brush, making marks. The journey down to the beach is very important to me. I haven't been doing a lot of outdoor stuff because of COVID, but I'm aching to get back out there.
So everyone feel free to keep typing questions, but I think we can talk about your upcoming workshop. So you're going to be doing a workshop through the Malouf, and you've collected some materials from our Discovery Garden. Why don't you tell everybody about that?
I thought I've been out there twice. I thought it would be a special connection to have. I have tons of materials here, but I thought, well, why don't I go out there and work with the garden, see what I could find. So there's a beautiful black bamboo garden that I cut bamboo from, yucca tree sections that are really light, this type of cactus, the golden bamboo, which I called the Buddha belly. I collected that. And also certain palm frond, fibrous materials that I'll be putting in the kits, the brush making kit. So it's very different for me now doing an online workshop. I did my first one at the Truro Center for the Arts at Castle Hill in Mass, right below Provincetown, this in July. So I'm going to collect all the handle material and the hairs and all the needed materials and put them in the kit and send them off. And then I'm gonna do a 2-day workshop, morning and afternoon, and I'll be talking you through each morning and afternoon a different brush and different sizes of brushes. So I'm excited about that. Actually, this is the first time I've used regional materials in this context as a homage, as an offering. So I'll be teaching different knot tying methods, how to glue the hairs, how to insert them into the handle, the ferrules, how I use the brush. It'll be a intense. We decided to do a weekend workshop versus a week and have more time. So it'll be 9:30 to 12:30. We'll break for lunch, and then it'll be 2 o'clock to 5. That'll give me time to work with you after my demos and breakout groups, and give you time to work so you can ask me questions. So, and I'll answer any other questions you want about workshops. I didn't really include that, the workshops in my talk, but workshops have been a large part of my life, all over the world. Shoemaking, ceramics, brush making. So I love sharing and teaching. That's my passion. That's my calling.
Yeah, and so I'll be sending everyone a link to the workshop sign up if you're interested in joining us. I'll be sending after this. We're recording this, and we'll send you. I'll send you a link to the recorded video in case sometimes people's Wi-Fi makes them miss a few minutes or something. You can view the video, this talk, on YouTube, and then you can also sign up for the workshop if you'd like. So I'm also curious about your material gathering process. Is it intentional that you'll maybe go for a hike thinking that you're going to find something, or is it usually things that you just are happenstance, like the crow's feather falling, or is it kind of a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. I've gone to thrift stores for years, or vintage sales, estate sales. Right now, I'm in the process of not bringing much in because I'm I want to purge and get rid of stuff. I think by being around all my stuff, it's got me to a point where I need to purge. I have an incredible library of materials for my work, and it's important to have that library because I can't just go out and buy it. So for when I go down after a rain, I know that there's going to be bamboo washed up from the Santa Ana riverbed, and the riverbeds that gets ball milled. And I can go along the beach and I take my little saw, my Japanese saw, and my bags, and I'll cut pieces. Like say if there's a big stalk of bamboo, I'll cut the middle out that has the curve. I'll just key in on that real cherried part. So for me, the hunt for material, that's a big part of the workshop. So that's why, my wheels are always spinning for this Malouf workshop. And each workshop, so for example, at the Truro Center, I brought students out to the beach and we collected off the beach during the workshop. So anytime I can, I bring my art and ecology students out when we're in session, non-COVID, to the beach to do brushes and enzos on the sand. So I'm overwhelmed. Getting back to getting rid of stuff, there's this term called the Swedish death cleanse. It's not so much about death, but it's a cultural thing that happens in Sweden. When you turn your mid 50s, you've spent a lot of your life collecting, and then that they think in that society going the other way, spending the rest of your life decollecting and getting rid of stuff, so you don't have that you're freed up to move around and you see things and let go. And your heirs, you think your heirs may want your stuff, but that's not necessarily true. We're connected to our stuff, but why not let go of the stuff while you're here, and you can give it away. You can give it to people that want it or could cherish it. And so I think during the time of COVID right now, it's really making me reflect being around all my stuff in this case. I think a lot of us might be feeling that way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm feeling that. I can attest to that. So Charlotte was asking about she's interested also in the material collection, and she's asking if you search for specific items, and she's also asking about what kinds, do you use certain kinds of paper or make your own paper for your work, or maybe it's not only paper, other substrates.
I love I use rice paper, so I like rice paper. I like papers that I can marble, and there's a technique called sumi nagashi. It's a Japanese marbling technique that I love, where you put the sumi ink on top of the surface and with a little bit of oil binder, and then it connects to the paper. It creates this smoky pattern. So for me, the paper, I love Arches cold press. I 140. I love. I've made my own papers over time. I absolutely love good paper. And so sometimes bad paper, paper bags or scrap paper. It's interesting. When I'm teaching my art and ecology class now, a lot of my students don't have their normal sketchbook, and they're reverting to using recycled materials in a very inventive way that has been a nice offshoot from that. So they're using stuff from their trash can and flattening it out and crumpling. Like yesterday I saw a student, they crumpled the paper bag and then painted the ground on it, but those wrinkles really were pretty amazing, and that gave that piece of paper that was just going out to the landfill another life. So I love black bamboo. It grows slower, it cracks. So when I preserve my fresh cuts, I'll dip them in wax at the top and bottom to keep them from splitting over time. I'll cure it out for a year. I'll often, I love the Huntington Garden. So I'm friends with the Huntington Garden, so the gardeners there. So during that drought we had before the rains, we had a long drought. A lot of their, it's bamboo garden, golden bamboo garden right by the parking lot, a massive garden dried out. So they let me go in there and harvest this incredible Buddha belly bamboo, the golden, and a lot of it had splits. And I thought, what am I going to do with these splits? So what I've done is I've made fan brushes on the side. So using the brush from the side, but indenting moose mane or elk or deer on a longer length, where you hold the handle at a horizontal versus a vertical. So when I'm gathering materials, thoughts are always running through my mind of how can I use this? How can I really bring it new life? And for some of my brushes deal with humor or toys or things that heirlooms, you know, pieces that have an energy of a history to it. So.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of using recycled materials, like we have a piece in the Malouf collection by Alfredo Ramos Martinez, who would use newsprint, you know. And I think there's often, you talk about, you know, there's an ephemeral quality to your work. And I think having expensive materials can often kind of create an attachment or pressure, especially if, you know, art students. It's easier to kind of be free with your process if you're not worried about how much money you spent on the paper, right? Do you try to instill these things in your students for experimentation?
Oh, especially, yes. I mean, it goes from the clay process all the way to the mixed media. When I was in Idaho, my students learned what is clay. Okay, it comes in a bag, but okay, so what? What is in there? What's it made out of? They'd make their own clays. They would dig their own clay, and I've always pushed experimentation because it's inquisitive. It keeps it from being boring or mundane, and that leads to further discoveries. So I think that materials, for me, it's all about recycling and giving new life to what we see as old junk. We live in such a consumer society and a now society that nature has so much to offer. It's odd for me to go to a Michael's or a Joanne Fabrics and buy materials. It's like, oh God, do I have to? You know, for me, it's about, you know, finding it another way where it allows you to take other additional risks. If the material is so precious, sometimes it can be a hindrance. I also work in series, so I don't make just one brush, I'll make a series. And so since I have a large array of materials, I can interdisperse and change them around rapidly, and push that idea of that series. So that's what's kept me from fresh in the brush versus going commercial with them, saying I wanted to make my Bob Ross brush. I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to go that commercial because I didn't want to lose the magic. Although I could have gained a lot of money maybe on the other flip, but hey, I really want to go into selling my brushes in a different layer now, but my way, and timing is coming up for that. So.
Great. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, right at 5 o'clock here. So yeah, thank you so much, Glenn. Really enjoyed the presentation, and thanks to everyone for joining us. And I'll be sending you that follow-up email shortly with more information. You can make your own brushes with Glenn in his workshop. And I'll if you have any last words, Glenn, I'll leave it to you.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here, and I hope you take some part of this talk and bring it out into the outside world, pass it on to people you are working with, people you love, people you come in contact with. We all need each other. Artists need artists, other artists, and we're all in this together. So remember to live your bliss and find that jelly bean. So thank you again for being here, everybody. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, Glenn. That's a great way to end it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Happy Valentine's Day. Take care. Stay safe out there.
Bye-bye now.